Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Fairfax House service visit. I'd like to please introduce Ben Carblis, Director of Service Delivery at Mission Australia. Hi, Ben.
Morning, Greg, and morning, everybody. It's welcome to our service visit for Fairfax House. It's great to have you here, and really appreciate your ongoing support and interest in this such much-needed program. Before I start, I'd like to commence with Mission Australia's acknowledgement of land. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, and we pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, the culture and dreams of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We recognise and respect their cultural heritage, beliefs and continual relationship with the land, and we recognise the importance of the young people who are the future leaders. Usually I'll be sharing that from our national office in Sydney on Gadigal land, but today I'm actually working remotely, like so many people due to COVID, working remotely from home at north of Avoca, and that's on dark and young land of the Central Coast. So welcome again. An opportunity to learn more about our Fairfax House program from Jules, our area manager in Outer West Sydney, who's been supporting this program for many years. But before I do, some reflections on what the year has been, and it almost goes some way to point to the importance of such a program. COVID has been incredibly disrupting to all of us. It's impacted all of us in many different ways, but really it's impacted those vulnerable quite significantly. We've seen increased numbers of people coming to us at risk of homelessness or in fact homeless. We've seen increased numbers of family and domestic violence. Mental health has been a real challenge for so many, and all of these issues are impacting on our families and children. So the need is great. We've been really thankful to the government over this period of time in terms of the investment and leaning forward into how they could support people. JobKeeper support, job seeker support, increasing supports there, and real interventions of what happened in Sydney as well. Really thankful for that. But what we're concerned about is this is coming to an end. In March, job seeker will be no more, as will JobKeeper. And we are concerned about the cliff that may happen to those people in need as we approach this time. Yes, the government did increase the job seeker rate from what it was pre-COVID times, but only by $4 a day. And it won't go anywhere near providing the much needed support that our children and families significantly really do need. Rent is going up too. COVID has really pushed rent prices up. We've probably all seen the real estate prices skyrocket, and so too that does rent. And that's where most of our people that we support need to find accommodation. So it's more expensive to live, and rental prices have gone up. All of these things provide a level of backdrop that really does shine a light on the support of needing to help our children and families. And our Fairfax House goes a long way and has been doing so for some time to support these children and families. And it can only be done through the support of people on the line, donors, to really make this happen. So I'm going to get out of the way, opportunity for you to learn more about this program. And I'm going to hand over to Jules. She's our area manager. She's been doing some wonderful things for Mission Australia for close to 15 years. I think it's 15 years in November, Jules. So over to you, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks for that, Ben. And yes, it's 15 years this year. Thanks so much for having me today. And I get really excited to talk through our programs and to share the wonderful work that my caseworkers do on the ground every day. So I get quite passionate, and I always love sharing that with everybody that wants to listen. So thank you for having me. A little bit about Fairfax House. So we're out in Western Sydney, and we're based at our beautiful centre out at Kingswood Mac. So we're in the heart of Western Sydney in Nepean, and we have some of the most resilient families that we can imagine, but along that also some of the most profound and heart-wrenching stories that come across our desks every day. Our families are experiencing homelessness, and that's often due to a gamut of stories: increased rent, finding affordable living, and this often results in families living in extremely unstable situations. So they're living in their cars with their children every day that they potentially drive to from an unsafe environment, so living near the river in their cars, and potentially driving to the closest McDonald's and washing their children, getting them ready for school and taking them to school as they drive to work. It leads to broken education for children, generational trauma, and a whole gamut of issues that entails. And people might think that this is, only a few people or a very minor issue, but we find that it's running rampant and it's quite constant. For example, on the weekend, one of our families went to try to find stable accommodation, affordable accommodation, rent that they could afford, and there was 45 other applicants lining up waiting to view that property. Now, if I had a house that I was trying to rent out and I had a single mum with 4 children on a pension trying to rent that house, and then I had 45 other people with 2 incomes and no children and no pets, who would you choose to put into that accommodation? And this is some of the things that they're up against, not to mention things like generational trauma, displacement, escaping DV. So these are some of the stories that we come across. Our caseworkers work with these families to help stabilise their accommodation. They wrap supports around. They connect both the parents and the children back into education and pathways to employment. They support the children and the families to get a routine and to be able to stabilise that for families. But in truth, once a family has stable accommodation and that fundamental right to have a roof over your head is met, then the families themselves can start looking at, what is it that my family needs? What else can I provide for my family? And what is that need that I need to look at? And I think the best way for me to explain what my caseworkers do is to put it into a story. So I thought I might share one of our stories with you. And of course, I've changed the client's name to protect her identity. So I want to introduce you to Margaret. Margaret first met our caseworkers through one of our early intervention programs. So one of our Mission Australia funded programs called Paint, Pen or Thread. Now, Paint, Pen or Thread is a early literacy program that spreads the word of the importance of early literacy. And by putting out a mat, encouraging children to read, we met a little girl who was 3 years old in a school. And mum was very shy and wouldn't come anywhere near the workers, but the little girl ran up to read the books. And this went on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And our caseworkers, who are very skilled, noticed that mum wouldn't engage with us, but the little girl was very excited to read the books and was so engrossed in the stories that she sat there for the whole time. So for 40 minutes before school, the little girl would sit on the mat. And this went on for nearly a school term. And every day our caseworker would make sure that she took the time to make eye contact with the mum and spend the time to slowly build up trust and rapport with that mum. And it took a long time. And by the end of the term, the mum finally made eye contact and actually nodded her head. And then the next term, we were there again with our early literacy mat and the Paint, Pen or Thread and with our books. And mum actually said hello. And so over another term of being there and our caseworker making the effort to go up and speak to her, we finally started to build up a trust and relationship with this mum. So for 2 school terms, this mum and her little girl was dropping off her big sister to school and was reading the books. And over time, over 2 terms, that relationship started to build. By the 3rd school term, so we're now talking nearly a whole school year, the mum started to talk to the caseworker and we invited her to a play group that we run. And so in the 4th school term, she came to the play group. And at the end, so in the last week of the school year, so for a whole year, we had built relationship with this mum. She said to the playgroup caseworker, she said, "Can I talk to you after playgroup?" And of course we said yes. And so the caseworker said, what's going on for you? What's happening? And she said, I need to tell you my story because now I can finally trust you to hold it for me. And so they sat down and had a conversation. And this is her story. So she had escaped family and domestic violence. And I won't go into those details because it's very early in the morning, but I can tell you that even in my 15 years of experience, it's one of the most sad stories of family and domestic violence. She had finally scraped up, so he financially controlled everything that she did. He controlled everything that she had, and she scraped up enough money, so she was putting her coins away and scraped up enough money to put petrol in the car because he only filled up the car enough for her to drive to from school. And every day, every week that she would put money, few coins away, and took her months to be able to save up enough money to fill up the car. And one day she put the kids in the car with their lunch boxes and nothing else. And she got in the car to drive the kids to school and kept driving till the car ran out of fuel. And then begged, pleaded and borrowed to continue to fill up the car. And she travelled from Queensland to New South Wales to escape the domestic violence. She landed in New South Wales with absolutely nothing, but she had her three children, and was safe away from the abuse that she was receiving. And in that, she finally slept in the car with nothing, and she had nowhere to live. She was sleeping above a shop on a mattress with three children, with no washing machine, no fridge, and she was receiving some Centrelink money. And not the full amount because she didn't want to tell Centrelink her whole story in case he found her. And she was seeing our service for a whole year without telling us this. And she had not a lot of food in her fridge because every cent that she had to buy fresh food every day. She had no way to keep her food safe. And so once we heard this story, Fairfax House was able to take this family in, do a full assessment with her and her children, and be able to provide support and wraparound services. So we were able to put her in one of our Fairfax homes, be able to provide stable accommodation, furniture, a fridge, washing machine, and be able to allow this family to settle in stable accommodation for 6 months. Through that, Mum was able to settle. Her children were able to settle into the school properly. They were able to have food in the cupboards and in the fridge. They were able to wash their clothes. And Mum was able to feel like she was safe for the first time in 8 or 9 years. Through that connection, Mum then went back to education and became a family daycare educator, which we also provided. So then through that, she became educated. She also became employed. And now she works as an educator and actually has gone into further education and completing her uni studies and is now a fully qualified early childhood educator. And this is just one of those stories in a very short sedan that talks to the complexity of this kind of program that our caseworkers can do, but also the fear and the bravery that it takes for families to be able to say, I can't provide for my children. Because, you know, it takes a lot to be able to say, I haven't got this right now, and can you help me? And it takes a lot of compassion and empathy for our caseworkers to be able to hold that space and say, we can walk alongside you today until you can walk for yourself, and we'll be here until whatever time that takes. So I hope that gives you a little bit of understanding and showcases what Fairfax House is about. It's about helping provide stable accommodation, time for families to be able to take a breath, align what they need for their families, and be able to say, what do I need to do now to stabilise and to be able to provide and move forward onto a different pathway. And that's what I've got to say today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Jules. It's such a powerful story. And for those of you that do have questions, there's an opportunity if you want to put something in the chat. By all means, we do have a minute or two if you'd like to do that. Couple of reflections though, Jules. That 12 months of engaging with Mission Australia to build that level of trust, and to quote you, which I think you were quoting this lady, was, "I trust you to share my story because I know you can hold it." It's such an incredible way of saying something, because it's incredibly precious. It's someone's life, and the fear to be able to, the fear and the courage to share that story. But what comes next it's a big step, and that 12 months of building that rapport is incredible, and it makes you think, what about the other stories? Who else are we sitting next to or engaging with, or could be on the other side of the road or walking past us in a shopping centre, that has that same story and the fear that's behind their eyes in terms of what they're dealing with. So it's such a precious thing. And to hear now, to also reflect on, for the first time in 8 or 9 years, she feels safe, and now she's a qualified early childhood teacher. It's just fantastic. And I guess we can reflect on the impact that move has on her, but also those 3 beautiful children, and what their life is going to be like now, as opposed to what it would have been had she not had the courage to reflect and share with us her truth, so that we can provide that support.
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm just seeing that there is a question here. Jules, there's a question here, which is, what happens when a family cannot convert their circumstances in 6 months? So it's that, what happens if getting to the end of that time that they're with us in Fairfax House? Are you happy to answer that question?
Absolutely. So there is no real end date into Fairfax House. So it's client by client basis. So some clients, obviously we aim for the 3 to 6 months time frame, and that's so that the resource is there for the next family who may need it. But each family is unique, and so we work to what the family needs. And so if the family needs a further 3 months or even 6 months, then we will work for that. And some families are more complex and have a much more in-depth need and have more complex issues. So we will work towards that timeline for them. But I will say that most families have moved on to the next level of stable accommodation within 9 months. So most families have, well, in fact, all have moved on within that 9 month period. So,
thanks, Jules. I've got another question here. And this is, really appreciating, the story that you shared. I think that's been really helpful. Have we seen a spike in regards to COVID, noting that there's been a significant spike in family domestic violence across the country?
Absolutely seen the impacts of domestic and family violence. That's been increasing in the last 12 months. In all honesty, I think in terms of the impact of COVID in families, I think we will start to see that in the next 12 to 18 months. And the fear from my perspective is that is how we will be able to relate that back to COVID, given that in children we won't necessarily see that direct line impact, because we won't see, the mental health impacts won't come out for another 18 months to 2 years, because that's the resilience of children, and we'll start to see that behaviour and mental health impacts then. But in terms of family and domestic violence, that absolutely, that increase is starting to, as that restrictions are lifting and as people are now emerging out of homes, we are definitely seeing women being able to come out and be able to, as the perpetrators are going back out to work or leaving the home, women are able to get to leave and come safe. Our biggest issue has been that in the last 12 months, the unemployment rate is higher, and so the perpetrators have been at home with the victims, and so the victims haven't been able to actually leave the premises safely, and so that's been the issue. And I think that in the next 12 months we'll see even a more increase of DV and family domestic violence in terms of reporting. It's not like it's not happening. I just think in the reporting it'll be even higher in the next 12 months.
Thanks, Jules. And we know that with the family domestic violence, the unemployment rate has gone up, and that's created a range of stresses. It's also the fact that a lot of people are working remotely and working from home, and so there's often not that level of escape and detachment, which creates a whole lot of other issues. There's another question here, Jules, which was about the program that this family joined us with at first, build that relationship, Paint Penrith Red. Can you talk a little bit more about that program?
Absolutely. So it's a community engagement program. You'll have to watch my time on this one. I am very passionate about Paint Penrith Red. It's a program that is about showing parents that they are the most important teacher in a child's life. They are the first teacher in children's lives. And they are the most important. And so it's recapturing the literacy skills that we kind of lost. And so it's teaching parents about rhyming and singing and reading from birth, or even before birth, but often we talk from birth because the community understands that. And so we provide multiple opportunities in community to showcase how to do that. So fun ways. So we get out there and we sing and we rhyme. We show them how bad we sing and rhyme, so parents can feel confident to get out there and sing and rhyme and play with children. So it's about capturing the fun in literacy, and to show them how important that they are as the first teachers in their children's lives, and that the community has to play a role in being that it takes a village to raise a child, not just a parent, and that we need to act that way. And so we are educating the community in their role in helping raise children. And so we have a mascot called Ruby, and we promote literacy by using a mascot, just like McDonald's does in using their marketing tools. So we use the same kind of marketing, but in a positive way, and we use books and play, and we use that as an engagement tool also. So that's the fun side of it, because we're teaching literacy, but it's a soft entry point for all of our other programs, because parents will often let children come up and play and be in the fun, so in the books and in the fun, and build trust that way, just like the story I told, before they will come and talk about I can't provide for my child tonight, or I have no food for my child, because they need to build trust and support that way. And so it's a soft entry also into can I trust you with my story, because if I can't provide for my child, you might take my kids away from me, and that's a real fear, and it's not just a stigma, it's not just a myth, it's actually real. And they have had that experience. Many families have had that experience in their own life, and so they have to know that services can be trusted. And so there's a fun side of Paint Penrith Red, and a real need to teach literacy and parents about how to teach children about literacy, because if we educate children to read, then they can be advocates for themselves as adults. So that's one side of it. The other side is a soft entry point for people to access services that are so vital to their everyday need. So I'll try to keep to a really tight time frame, because I get really excited about it.
Yes, it is, and I've been and experienced the wonderful times that we have with the children in Paint Penrith Red. It's incredible. It's something that is only provided to us with the support of donors as well. There's a couple more questions that I have here, Jules, and I might have a go at answering the first one, and then I'll throw to you for the next one. This question is, if you have an empty house with bedrooms, can that be any of use to Mission Australia to support families? That is such a wonderful, generous offer, and something that we certainly really do appreciate. We do get this offer from time to time. It is one, though, that we need to provide great care in terms of how that support can actually be provided. Other people in the home. So there's a real importance of due diligence, as well as to make sure that we can be sustainable. What we set up for people, we can follow through for the long term. So always interested to hear, but there are some things that we really need to think through to ensure that we set up our families and children for success. I'll go to another question just in a moment, but Jules, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, I think you captured that perfectly well, and yeah, we're absolutely happy to talk that through with you at any time.
Thanks, Jules. And I'll try not to put you on the spot every time.
That's fine. I'm happy for you to do that.
This is good fun. Okay, so another question that we have, Jules, is probably the intake process. How do we triage people into the program, and what type of numbers are we looking at in terms of supporting children and families?
Yeah, okay, so our intake process, that's an easy question. So we have a dedicated intake officer, or actually we have two. One works part-time, one is full-time, and they do a full intake assessment process, and that works alongside our specialist homelessness program. So we use the same process for that, which ranges a whole gamut of questions that talks to their story and their need and what is happening, and that allows us to capture all of the families that are coming through the door, the telephone, the intake lines, and then that intake team sits with the program manager every couple of days, and they triage those families. So they talk through, well, where is the need, who's at the most risk, what's happening, and then we triage those to the caseworkers based on the priority of that need. And if somebody has come in through that intake process that can't wait for that 24-hour or 48-hour conversation with the program manager, the intake worker would take that immediately to deal with. And then the caseworkers pick that up within 24 to 48 hours and make contact and move that through to casework and go from there. So that's our intake process. In terms of need and what our numbers are, we have 22 properties under our Fairfax program, and so we try to move those families, try to empty those properties at least twice a year. So that would be at least 40 families in a 12-month period. That's give or take. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit more, sometimes it's a little bit less. But we also do outreach. So not every family obviously has the opportunity to be in one of our properties. And so we will potentially find a property within the private market, which is very slim, or within government housing, which is even slimmer, and do some outreach support there. So it can range between 40 and 48 clients a year.
Thank you so much, Jules. And as you can imagine, the numbers of people that need support is significant. And this service goes some way to support those people that we are able to engage and wrap around. One last question, I think, Jules, and we might start to consider wrapping this up, is once a family moves on, do you provide support to sustain the tenancy?
Yeah, absolutely. So we will do an exit strategy with the family. So we will move the family into either private accommodation or permanent accommodation within housing. So some of our families, we have been lucky enough to get them on priority housing. And then we will do at least up to 3 months outreach support with them once they've moved into that permanent accommodation, because we want to make sure that they're stable. We don't want to set up what we call a revolving door service where we move them out of ours and then they come back into our door later on. We want to make sure that they're stable and that those children are settled back into the school, because any transition for a child is difficult. And if a child is going through a difficult time, then parents go through a more difficult time. So, and if that is longer, so some families that needs to be longer as well, but our minimum is at least 3 months on exit.
Oh, thank you, Jules. Well, we might wrap it up there, and really appreciate the understanding of this program in terms of shape and size and the dimensions, but in particular the depth that you provided, Jules, with that story, one of so many, and that mother and her 3 children. It's a very impactful story, and we know there are so many of people there that we're supporting, and also those that we want to be able to reach out to as well. I'd really like to thank everybody for joining. Really do appreciate your generous donations. Without that, we would not be able to continue to deliver these programs in such an impactful way. The need is great, it is growing, and we need to be able to continue to reach out and support these vulnerable families and children. Well, on that note, thank you once again. We'll wrap it up here and really do appreciate your interest in Fairfax House. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.